Hey everyone, I hope this doesn't sound too disjointed. I'm not a native English speaker, so please bear with me. I've been married to my amazing wife for about 4.5 years now. Time really does fly. We have 2 little boys, both under the age of 4. One just turned 3, and the other is 2. They're the light of our lives, but being parents to such young kids comes with its own set of challenges. Between managing their needs and our own, it sometimes feels like we're just barely keeping it together. Both my wife and I work full-time, and between the kids, our careers, and managing the household, life has become a routine. Our sex life has dropped to once a week, maybe a little less. I'm a guy with a pretty high libido, but I don't pressure her, never have, never will. I know she's tired, overwhelmed, and juggling so many things. I try to take some of the load off her, so I'm the one who picks up the kids from daycare every day, does the grocery shopping, cooks dinner, cleans up afterward, gives them their baths, changes their diapers, and makes sure they get to their appointments. I like doing it all, but it doesn't leave much time for intimacy or fun between us. I can see how it must wear on her. She's amazing and does so much for the family, but we've both had to sacrifice a lot, especially in the bedroom. We've always had a good rhythm, though. We go to bed early, usually around 9 or 9:30, so we can wake up early and start the day again. It's simple, but it works. Every now and then she'd go out with her girlfriends, maybe a couple of times a month, but there was never anything wild. She'd always come home early, and I never worried about it. I trusted her completely, probably more than I should have. We had what I thought was a solid, dependable relationship. But then, earlier this year, around April, everything started to change. My wife told me that she felt like we were growing apart. She said that she didn't feel like having sex anymore, and that she just wanted to live together but without intimacy. She said it wasn't something I was doing wrong, it was just how she felt. She didn't want to force herself to do anything. I was blindsided. We hadn't had any major fights or disagreements. Everything seemed fine. I was confused. I didn't know what to make of it. My mind raced. What had I missed? Was she unhappy? Was I failing as a husband? Literally, the same day she told me this, everything went back to normal. We had a great dinner, shared some intimate time together, and it felt like nothing had changed. For a moment, I thought maybe I was overthinking it, and that things would be okay. It was like she had pulled away, only to pull back again. I began to wonder if maybe I was just being paranoid, or maybe she had a moment of doubt, like people sometimes do. But then, a month later, things started to get a little more confusing. On May 22nd, she randomly started asking me about a small, gated community in the southern part of our city. It's a quiet, middle-class area, mostly older people, and it's by the beach. She sent me a screenshot showing that she and one of her girlfriends, let's call her Girl A, were talking about meeting up there. Girl A's cousin lived in that neighborhood, and she was planning to visit. Since Girl A lives just 10 minutes away, I didn't think much of it at first. We've always had each other's locations on our phones, so I saw that they were at a restaurant together. Everything seemed fine. It felt like a typical catch-up between friends, no red flags. But a few days later, my wife sent me a picture of her boobs. Now, she never does that. It caught me off guard. And when I saved the photo, I realized that it was taken 3 days earlier, in our bathroom, late at night. It seemed strange. Why send that out of nowhere? Was this just her being playful, or was there something else going on? Then, on June 2nd, she told me she was meeting another friend she hadn't seen in months. A couple of hours later, she said the place they were at closed early, so she was going to meet up with Girl A and her cousin at the gated community again. She said they were at the beach this time. It didn't seem like a big deal at first, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I'd been through the motions before, her late nights out, her promises that everything was fine, but my instincts were telling me something had changed. A week and a half later, on a Friday morning, I noticed she was shaving her private parts. I didn't think much of it then, but that night, she went out again and started texting me about how Girl A was having problems with her husband. She said she had to wait for them at the cousin's house in the gated community. It was about 10 p.m. when she first told me. A half hour later, I texted her to check in, and she responded right away, saying she was still waiting for her friend. We exchanged a few texts, and everything seemed normal. But then, around 11:30, I woke up and saw she was still over there. So I texted her again asking, "What's going on? Why are you still there?" She replied that it was a long story, that girl A had shown up, then left, and it was just a confusing situation. She said she'd called an Uber and was on her way home. 5 minutes later, she texted me again to say she was already heading back. It all seemed rushed and a little too convenient. I was starting to feel like I was missing something, and all these little inconsistencies kept stacking up in my mind. 3 days after that, I came home from work, cooked dinner for our family, and we ate together. After dinner, she fell asleep on the couch. I checked her phone while she was sleeping and saw a conversation with a guy, someone I didn't know. The conversation was muted, and most of it had been deleted, but the last 2 messages were still there. One was from her saying, "You're crazy. I'm not going anywhere, my husband just cooked dinner," with a picture of my meal attached. His reply was, "That looks good." I also noticed that he had shared his location with her, and it was in the same neighborhood where she had been hanging out that Friday night. In fact, he was at one of the very houses she had been at. I woke her up and confronted her. At first, she was scared and started making excuses, but eventually, she admitted that she had been walking to the cousin's house when a guy who lived next door started staring at her. She claimed he got her phone number from the cousin, and that they had only been talking for 1 day. She swore on our kids' lives that she hadn't done anything wrong. She begged me to trust her, and said our marriage meant everything to her. She promised she would block that guy and never speak to him again, nor would she go anywhere near that area. I saved his number and sent him a text, telling him I was her husband. I knew what had been going on, and I invited him to meet me face to face. Since I could see his location on my wife's phone, he blocked me immediately. I know you might think I was being naive, but I truly believed everything she said. Weeks went by, and I was still trying to wrap my head around what had happened. I went through her phone again, and the guy was still blocked. I looked at the conversation she had with Girl A that night, and it didn't make sense. After Girl A had told her about problems at home, my wife had gone straight to that house, without an address. And why did she only call the girl once she was already there? She had also started sharing her location with the girl around that time. It didn't add up. How does someone just show up at a stranger's house at 10 p.m. without an address? I opened the conversation with Girl A and saw that the last time they spoke was back in early May. No phone calls, no texts. There were no Uber rides that night either. Someone had picked her up from our house, driven her to the gated community, and driven her back home. I've carried this around in my head for the last 6 months. We've gone on 2 vacations together during this time, and she still goes out with her friends, just like before. But now, she calls me whenever she's out, showing me who she's with, probably trying to reassure me. She stopped talking to that girlfriend, and we've kind of settled back into a routine, but the thought of everything that happened still eats me up inside. A week ago, I finally decided to bring it up again. She denied everything and said she could show me the Uber receipts. I said, "Okay, show me." She flipped out, started yelling, and said, "Let's just get a divorce then. I don't want to be with you if you don't trust me." She insisted she hadn't done anything wrong. That guy is 38 years old, still lives with his parents, 3 sisters, and a bunch of nephews in that house. I love my family. I love my kids. But I just don't know what to do anymore. Over the last 6 months, we've kind of gotten back to where we were, and yesterday she was talking about how we were going to take another vacation next year and upgrade our wedding rings. She said she couldn't wait to start 2025 with her family. Those 3 weeks in June, she treated me well. She made reservations for my birthday dinner, paid for a vacation, and invited a bunch of people to celebrate. But I don't trust her anymore. I don't want to do nice things for her anymore. I think she feels that. I love my kids, and I want them to have both parents. Last week, she asked me if we could just forget all of this and never talk about it again because it makes her feel distant from me. I said, okay. But honestly, I think about it every day. It's wearing me down.